Welcome to Risk Roundup. Today, as digital data becomes a criminal commodity, it is driving a range of criminal activities, including phishing, farming, malware distribution, hacking of corporate databases, extortion, and so much more. At all levels, the tools used by cyber criminals, which are supported by a very mature infrastructure of malicious code writers and some specialist web hosts and so many individuals that are able to lease network of hundreds of thousands of compromised computers to carry out many automated attacks are individually and collectively posing a direct threat to security of cyberspace, geospace, and space. Now, since the criminal threat from cyberspace has become multidimensional and is targeting individuals and entities across nations, its government, industries, organizations, and academia at a rapidly growing rate, combating cybercrimes has become one of the top priorities for every nation. Now, since cybercrimes from cyberspace can be technically complex and legally intricate, rapid advances in the functionality of information communication technologies and inherent differences between nations' legal systems bring complex challenges for cybercrime investigation. To discuss investigating cybercrime further, I'm delighted to welcome Advocate Vicky Shah to Risk Roundup. Vicky is an advocate, author, speaker, legal advisor, and trainer to police officers in India for cybercrime investigation. He speaks frequently on cybercrime safety awareness and prevention and is author of Are You Protected? The Handbook. Welcome, Advocate Vicky. We are delighted to have you on Risk Roundup.
Thanks, Jayashree. It's a privilege to be with you.
Wonderful, Vicky. So it seems that there is now a sophisticated and self sufficient underground economy in cyberspace in which digital data has become the criminal's commodity. What do you think is driving this exploding cybercriminal activity today?
See, there is this trust which brings customers to your business, and most of the times criminals are targeting the businesses because you have data, which is in itself an economy. It's no more only information or a process information. The definition of data from the process information has changed to a data with economy benefits, and there are a lot of information which can be used against an individual. ID can be compromised, they can impersonate someone, misrepresent someone, and by the time you find out who is responsible, it's already too late at times. So data being the new asset class, and people wanting to have more data which could be used for their own benefit, we see a lot of increase in crime of late across the globe.
Very true, very true. And over the years, advances in information communications and digitization technologies and the democratization of information has given rise to this globalization of cybercrimes, where the personal information, like you just said, has become a commodity and it moves far too quickly for conventional law enforcement methods to keep up. So, what do you see a threat because of this?
If I were to speak in terms of Indian context, in the last, I've been in this domain from 14 years now, and this financial year from the month of April, if I were to say, there are a lot of cases which are reported because of awareness which is there. Also, the people they feel that if they don't report, there are other people who can be duped. So that kind of sensitivity is also been taken into account, which earlier was not the case. They were afraid that if they go and report a crime, people will laugh at them. There will be a laughing stock. That reputation is at stake, which is now changed. The mindset is changed. Also, with the digitization and the digital India initiative and the digital payments in India, most of the things are from offline is moving to online. So that again is one of the reasons for people to be more aware, more secure, and more forthcomingly reporting the incidents which they were not otherwise doing earlier. If we were to see 2 years, 3 years back, there were less reported cases, which has now increased. So that's because of awareness. And as it happens, then there are other people who can safeguard themselves from similar incidents because of such things which are being reported in the public domain.
That is really, very good news that the awareness is increasing and people are, reporting this kind of crimes that they are, facing, irrespective of whether they are individuals or, entities, whether they are in governments or whether they are in, industries or academia, they are coming forward to report on what is, what vulnerabilities and what crimes are happening to them. That is a really good news. Now, the globalization of cybercrime blurs this traditional distinction between threats happening to individuals or entities across nations, in government, industries, organizations, and academia, or even to the military. And it does not respond to the single jurisdiction approaches to policing that nations were so used to over the years. Now, the liability of these networks to exploit for a number of different reasons and number of different motives, and the ease with which these criminals move from one type of illegal activity to another, it suggests that the silo boundaries that we had so far in managing the security risk and this territorialism in all its formats has become obstacle to successfully combat the misuse of this internet information communication technology. So from your assessment, what you see in India, what are the jurisdictional challenges that are becoming obstacles when addressing cyber crimes?
So we have a very beautiful piece of law, which is the Information Technology Act, and it has an international territorial jurisdiction. So if an offender commits an offense outside India, he or she can still be prosecuted in India as if they have done offense within India. So there is an international jurisdiction which is already there. And the only issue here is it is a time consuming process because we have to follow the procedure of MLAT, which is the Mutual Legal Assistance Treaty, and letter of rogatory. The sub is process in that fashion. So at times it becomes a time consuming process for cooperation. When it comes to national security concern or threat to nation, the cooperation from the international jurisdictions are very much received on time. Uh, More to do, what happens is typically the offenses when it talks about the social media platform, because those companies being out of India, of late there have been initiatives taken where the data localization is being demanded by the government for the foreign companies. So that will ensure that the data of the Indians are residing in India, and it can be catered to them within the time frame required for the law enforcement agencies to prosecute, convict, and otherwise. The judiciary is getting trained. There are special cyber courts in India. Each state has a cyber appellate tribunal, which is the IT secretary of the state as a judicial officer for that. So a lot of initiatives have been taken in this regards.
That's really good to know. Now, the act that you talked about, does it matter, what nationality those cyber criminals have, or is it, specific to Indian, national origin people who are doing the cyber crimes?
There is no nationality bar here. Anybody, even if they are a US or a UK or any country citizen doing something wrong in India against Indians, they are equally treated as criminals, and not any. Uh, there is no exception for that.
That's really good to know. Now, the course that you talked about, how qualified the personnel that they have, the individuals leading those initiatives in each state, how qualified are all those, individuals, and how competent are those courts, especially not with the human resources that we have, but the tools and technologies they have, and, the understanding about the intricacies of these complexities of the cyberspace that is out there. How much are they educated, what is the level of education and competencies that they have, that they can confidently and comfortably and competently address all the criminal challenges that are emerging from cyberspace.
So this profile is the IAS officer, the Indian Administrative Services. They could be either engineers, doctors, graduate in their own stream, but they have a judicial experience because they are also district judges in some profiles. And IT, Information Technology Department, is being headed by them. They are the IT secretaries of this department. So the overall IT policy for the state, overall development of the IT initiatives for the state, are under their control, so they understand fair amount of technology, the involvement of the systems in place, the role of technology which influences such crimes. Plus, they are given powers under the law to frame their own committee of experts, which can assist the courts, which is the like amicus query, the friends of the court. They can have their own experts which can be involved and help them to decide the technicalities if required. And legally, they are given the powers of the court because it's a tribunal and it's a quasi judicial authority. The time frame which generally the court takes is around 5 to 10 years, and this could be anything from 6 months to 2 years. So that kind of time frame is what they have to deal with. If And this is again a transferable position. So maybe after the tenure of couple of years, 3 years, 5 years, depending on the performance or otherwise the profile, the state can always change the IT secretary on their performance. So it's but they have some background of it, they have some judicial experience to that. Some of them may not be technically competent as far as education qualification is concerned, but the judicial mind is already there, which is of natural justice and principles. Plus, the law gives them the power about what factors they need to consider before deciding the quantum of punishment and penalty. So this is already been there, and there have been numerous cases which are available online through the portals of respective states. And a good amount of convictions and the cases have been decided in the recent past. So overall, if you see, it's a good step. This will always, there is always a scope of improvement which is going to be there with due time. But at least there is a special forum where a person can go and file the grievance for his damages to be recovered, which was not the case otherwise available for the citizens or companies, where in case if they were in difficulty.
Sure, of course. Now that is always a first good step. But then we also have to address what are different variables, what requires in that ecosystem to very comfortably and confidently address all the cyber criminals, or to even investigate the cyber crimes. What is necessary? So as cyber intrusions become more commonplace and more dangerous and more sophisticated, because of cyberspace, any form of theft, fraud, or exploitation can probably be perpetrated, programmed, or backed by a computer. Now, as a result, today and every day, even as you see in India, millions of people are being victimized by some sort of cyber computer crime or cyber crime. So, from what you see in India, what is the state of cyber crimes? I mean, you said that people are now coming out and talking about it or reporting, and their education awareness is there. But what is the state of cyber crimes? How many cybercrime attacks are happening? Who is being targeted and what kind of attacks are happening?
So there are mix of experiences I mean, when we read the reported articles in the news media and otherwise the clients who approach us. So the target is typically the individuals, the companies, and at times society at large about certain specific. Like we had something called as blue whale in the past. Now something has Momo challenge has come up. So for kids it is with respect to those threat. When we talk about individuals, it is about their banking account security, their debit card security, the OTPs, the two factor. So you may be surprised that India was the first country in the globe to have two factor authentication mandated by the regulator, which was in 2009. And now the countries are repeating, or they are wanting to replicate this in their own countries. So, and in terms of payment, if you were to speak, we have a cross platform interoperable platform called UPI, which is Unified Payments Interface, which allows safe and secure transactions across banks with individuals, which is again a global first. No other country is doing this. So there is a lot of innovation which is happening in the payment space and the security per se. People who are targeted are typically the businesses, proprietor level business, because they have less controls in place. They are not knowing what IT policy is, or what is a control objective, or what is a audit, or something on those lines. So those are the ones who are being targeted. Then there are people who use private email accounts, which are for business corporate. They don't use a secured mechanisms which are available, the settings which are there, typically the two factor and the OTP based systems or application specific passwords. So sometimes they don't configure it because there is lack of awareness there. So they may be targeted. Or for the college going teenagers, typically their profiles are being compromised, or they are fake profiles created for them because they have a different kind of threat and risk per se. Overall, if we were to see the number of complaints and the type of complaints that are being observed in the recent past, maybe 2 3 years, so we see business frauds, which is right from the impersonation to misrepresentation, ID theft. For individuals, we see more of their debit card, wallet, and other channels which are being compromised because of lack of awareness at times. Then there are people who represent as they are bank employees or authorities, and they want to compromise the details on the phones through social engineering techniques. So some people get victimized through that means also. And these are typically in the age group of senior citizen, where they don't know about whether a banker will call you for freezing or defreezing a debit card or a bank account. So those challenges will there. But if the overall, our average age of Indians is 28 years, 26 years, so that way people are being very smart to use their online data as well as the banking systems. So we have a mix of cases, which is with business threat as well as individual, but the quantum is not very high when it is about personal, what do you call, the ID level of issues. But if it is related to finance, then there is a big volume depending on the capacity or the limits of the transactions. That could be the risk or loss. So we also have a regulator, which is RBI, which has come with a circular last year, where they have limited the liability of consumer if they report the fraud on time and they are found not guilty. So banks have to compensate them, and banks need to have cyber insurance in place. And the liability is more on the bank to prove that the customer was at fault, rather than the customer to be proving that they are innocent. So those kind of regulatory measures are also in place. So we have a regulator, which is SEBI, the insurance regulator, the IRDA. We have RBI for banks. So all of them have their own cyber security framework. So that makes most of the companies accountable to process and protect the data of the customer. So from the compliance and the company perspective, they need to do a lot than the user itself. User have to be following basic hygiene and small few do's and don'ts, which will ensure that the data is safe at their end. But and we have also seen people, at times where they used to write ATM pin on the debit card and give the card to their office boys or the office staff to go and get cash. So then if some fraud happens through this, then they are not protected under this circulars or the guidelines, because you are giving a key to a person and then you can't say, oh, I was robbed. So even those kind of activities is also been observed at times.
Yes.
Then there is a mix and match of system and a physical way of crime, where a physical activity is done to take the information, which is then online used, and then a particular targeted attack is also performed. I've also successfully I've been able to help my clients recover money in online frauds, which is a very rare thing when you see invoice is being changed through an email man in the middle attack, and then the accounts are changed. So few countries have a good policy, like for example Poland has a policy where if you report any transaction suspicious, the government says you have 3 weeks of time to come and depose your case, and if you are found with merits, you get your money back. Which is, some things like this should be followed by other countries as well. Then there are times when we find loophole in the intermediary, and then the money also comes. Then there are business contracts between the clients, which says that if there is a reliance on the fake correspondence, then the liability of payment is with the person who remitter who makes the payment. So even those provisions can be invoked to recover money. So we have been successfully helping our clients to even recover money in such frauds also. I have 4 such successful case studies where, if I were to talk in terms of dollars, 1 lakh, $2,000, then about $96,000. In one case, it was 1.25 crore rupees. In one case, it was 1.40 crore. So, it's a very high amount for a particular business, mid-size SMEs who are typically having the turnover of that quantum. So there have been a success also in receiving money. There have been cases where there is partial money also recovered. There are cases where we have found a liability of both the parties, that there is a compromise at both the ends. So in those cases, both the parties have agreed to settle and, accept the 50% loss and 50% profit.
Good.
So
Good.
So businesses are understanding this kind of risk, and they're also open to such dynamic, terms and conditions. Apart from blaming each other that because of you we suffered loss, or because of us you suffered loss. So even that kind of shift is what I'm seeing here.
Good, good. No, that is good to know. But from what you see in India, and for the cases where you are involved, or the cases that you have witnessed, who is behind these cyber crimes?
So we see sometimes there are external threats, people who are out of India. There are sometimes competitor rivalry. There are people who are employed with some company who are implanted in other company, to get this corporate espionage and information from them. We also see sometimes people who have no head and tail of it are also a part of this. For example, a couple of years back, so last year we had a issue with one of the banking application where there was a flaw in the app. The flaw was such that the application never used to talk to the core banking system, and it used to give a positive confirmation to the payment switch for settlements. So this was identified by a person who was a software engineer, and he then exploited this vulnerability and duped a lot of people in the villages where he went and said, "You'll be getting fund from Jan Dhan scheme. You have to give your debit card and your mobile number." And then he configured the banking application in his own phone and used to use this exploit to siphon off funds. So there are at times when companies do not have proper user acceptance testing or the auditing done before a product which is launched, and then you find a issue which is exploited by the third party, and then the frauds are happening. So we have seen international players also, domestic players also, who are involved for such frauds.
I see, I see. Now, if we talk about any crime happen, irrespective of whether it's a blackmail or whether it's financial fraud, or somebody's identity is stolen, or some other kind of crime, cyber crime has occurred in India, or uh, and people go and then report, individual or entities, business or anybody, they realize that they have become a victim of cybercrime. They go report that cybercrime. So how does the investigation follows? What are the different steps, and who is involved in that investigation, and what is the process that follows for the investigation?
So when we talk about cybercrime investigation, in the Indian law, it is termed as a computer-related offense. A cybercrime globally does not have any definition per se. It's a misnomer which is generally used to represent any offense which is which is performed or which happens through the use of computers. So typically, when a person is a victim, he or she needs to go to the police station. That's the first thing what they need to do. They need to document everything about what is the fraud, what is the incident which happened, how it happened, what was the impact of it. Because of that, what has happened? Either there is a data loss, there is an account compromise, or there is a money which is gone. Each and everything has to be detailed, documented. After this documentation, which is detailed, it's a written form of complaint which needs to be submitted in the local police station where they stay. We also have cyber police stations which has jurisdiction for the entire region of Bombay and other places in India. There are times when local police station also have a power to register the FIR, which is the first information report. It need not be always sent to the cyber cell. The officers are trained each police station. So there are, if I talk about Bombay, we have 90. Mumbai, we have 93 police stations. So each police station has a independent cyber cell within the police station. So there are 5 officers who are trained to handle such kind of complaints, take the cognizance of it, accordingly proceed with what kind of other involvement would be required. And there is a cyber police station in itself which can always give a technical assistance if required to these local police stations. So we have those kind of arrangement in the city of Mumbai. Other states have similar groups like Special Task Force, or they have a cyber cell, high tech cell. There are different names given to them depending on the state, but even those are competent to take this complaint. After the complaint is filed, police does a preliminary investigation and analysis of it. They get in touch with the service
It's
providers.
20 hours.
Sorry, they get in touch with the service providers, the operators who are involved for such who are party to this criminal activity. They seek for the logs and the details, and then accordingly they find the criminal who is behind it, or the perpetrator who has done this. It typically takes something minimum 15 days to around 3 months or 6 months, depending on how early the one reports the crime. Like for example, if there is some offense which happens on the 1st of August, and I go and complain on 15th of October, which is almost 45 or 2 months and 15 days, like 75 days. If this is the time frame, then such issues will take at least 6 to 8 months for investigation,
But
because old.
that's where
That's why,
because see,
because
do you know?
your voice was missing, it skipped.
No, because see, the challenge is that for any cybercrime, I mean, if it has originated from the internet, and if it takes, I mean, you said that there are cyber, units within each police department, which is a good thing. But at the same time, you said that it takes from 4 to 8 weeks, or sometimes even more, depending on when the crime was reported. And if this cybercrime is internet based, then if each of these data that is critical, especially the internet protocol, the addresses, IP addresses, and the internet service providers that keep how long they keep the data, because normally the large internet service providers, they don't keep data more than 30 days, and if it takes this many weeks just to do the processing before any data is collected, then this is a cause of big concern, because then pretty much all the data and all the information that could help the investigation, it's already gone, because the internet service providers don't keep the data. So how do these cybercrime units operate optimally, and they are able to investigate the cybercrimes when the initial processing itself takes so many weeks and months?
See, initially the global days to identify a particular breach was around 210 days, which is now reduced to 180 days. Okay, so any corporate or any big firm, or before they even come to know that there is a breach or incident which has happened, it takes minimum 180 days for them to identify. And once they identify that, then they should not further delay it. When I say it takes 6 months, is because the logs are archived and kept. The logs which needs to be available, made available, it takes time for it to be reloaded, and then it is provided. So that's why that 6 months, or 3 months or 8 months is required for the logs to be retrieved from the archives and then provided to the police officer.
So
There are in India, so
you mean to say the internet service providers keep the data for that many months?
yes. So here there are companies which keep the logs for 1 year. There are companies which keep for 6 months. There are companies which keep for 3 months. So depending, and unfortunately, if you are in that ISP is used, whose data is only kept for 3 months, then you are then there is a challenge for the data to be available. But if the data is available for 1 year, 6 months and above, then there is always a success which you can get. Also, when you see the internet or the telecom base now, most of the mobile telecom companies are providing internet services. So they are also ISP as well as telecom service provider, and they keep the data depending on their company policy. So we have a regulator called TRAI, which is the Telecom Regulatory Authority of India, and they have given a mandate for them to keep the logs for certain duration. Uh, Discreetly, there is no time frame mentioned about how much days they have to keep, but with the financial records, they have to keep it for 7 years. So that is taken care in term when we talk about banking systems and the payments. So 7 years is what they have to keep the logs. So that is always, if there is a financial fraud, you still have 7 years of time frame to investigate, find out, because 7 years is what they have to mandatorily keep the log. When we talk about the internet based IP or email account based, or the fake profile on the social media or otherwise, then the person, once he or she identifies that there is a issue, they should immediately complain within a day or max 3 days, so that the recent activity which has happened in that period when they identified a particular breach, that can be always available within the proper time frame of 3 months to 4 months.
I see.
So,
That's a
so
large amount of data that stays locked and needs to be preserved. So I'm not sure how all these internet service providers are handling that, because India is a large country, and for I don't know how many exactly internet service providers are there, and how much data is being generated every single day that needs to be logged for 3 months, 6 months, or 1 year. So that will be interesting to know, what kind of how many internet service providers are out there and in India, and how much data is being generated. So that would be very interesting to know. But once somebody reports the cybercrime, how are the computer devices handled if the crime was device based?
So, depending on, suppose if it's a device-based activity, then the seizure is always happening. Then the forensic labs are being, there are state forensic laboratories and central government forensic laboratories where this particular devices are sent for their report. Initially, 2 years back, there was a lot of backlog for that, but now they are pretty fast. So it takes 6 months for a report or 8 months for a report to come, because the imaging is not only about analyzing of device, but to do a bit by bit image to see that there is no tampering done with the device itself, and then the relevant evidence is obtained from that particular device. uh, of late, what we see the challenge is, because most of the cloud platforms are used and the data is on the cloud, so the device is only a means to access the data. It's not residing on the device itself, because the data is outside on the cloud, which could be on any geographic location. So those kind of data, then the cloud audited logs and other logs are available, which can point out or hint to how and what has been done. So specifically, if there are cases where such things are involved and a different approach of investigation is followed, that's when the technical cyber cell or the cyber police station gets into action. If it is a slightly lower based profile in terms of personal data, or a particular profile related issue, or an email account, or a mobile telecom related SMS based or WhatsApp based or otherwise, then it will be dealt with the local police station level, where the skills are appropriately to handle such issues. If there is a source code theft, or there is a software which gets compromised, and then there is a other high level issues, then there is a different unit which comes into action. So there is a proper segregation of pecuniary complexity and otherwise within the jurisdiction. And this is not only in India, but it is across the globe. You will find similar issues even with the cops in US or even in UK or other countries which are developed countries also, because cybercrime is a issue faced by every nation. It's not limited to a developing nation like us. But still, there is something interesting thing called as jugaad, which is the Indian philosophy. Sometimes you have a conventional way of approach which helps you to investigate rather than being purely technical also at times.
Yes.
So it's a mix and match of both, and then like we have seen a lot of success stories within India. If you see, uh, by the cops, because cops are also learning. They are getting self-educated. They are part of discussion forums, conferences where we are discussing such trends, frauds. They also contribute to us. Then there are a lot of public-private initiatives within our country which helps police to get their skills upgraded. There are companies who are forthcomingly helping them, teaching them the new technology. There are experts. There are professionals who spend their time in educating officers. Officers are also open to learn. They are not shy from why should we learn. There is no such attitude issue here. So it's a mix and match. There are a lot of initiatives by government itself where they take, where we also be a part of it. We contribute and we try. It's like a contribution to the society. So we feel privileged to be part of such associations. And then recently there is a new personal data protection bill which has been draft version has come out in the last week of July, which is again made open for public for their comments till 14th of this month. I think September of 14th of September, and then they will again openly revise it as per the latest requirement of the seeing the technology enhancement and all. So there are a lot of positive initiatives taken, but yes, there cannot be a denial that we are still far behind. This We need more convictions. We need more expedited convictions so that there is a confidence and it acts as a deterrent to this. Uh, and but whatever is happening is it has its own pace at which it happens. So sometimes when being a practitioner or being an advocate, you feel that things should be fast. Like if I were a judge, I would decide a matter within 6 8 months. That's what I mean. But everybody feels, but not everybody gets chance to be that kind of a position then.
Sure, but see, there are two different aspects, right? Once the crime occurs, cybercrime occurs, the investigation part is one thing, and then the prosecution is another thing. So, prosecution is a whole different game, and that can take some time. That's not an issue, but investigation needs to happen rapidly because the nature of the crimes are such that you cannot wait for months and years like how in the traditional cases. And India has a huge amount of backlog. In all the cases, the judicial system is very, very slow there. So that is I believe one of the challenges that India faces, especially. I hope that the cyber investigation also and prosecution doesn't take the same doesn't go at the same speed, because that would be defy the purpose of how to quickly identify the cyber criminals, or how to quickly investigate the cybercrime. So that is I feel that there is a challenge there with India. But you talked about that the technology, the cyber units, then they come up with the technical skills and expertise to investigate the cyber crimes as necessary. So how is technology used by these units for cyber investigations, and do you think that they have the necessary technology infrastructure and resources to do their job?
So, if we were to compare with the population and the officers, the answer would be direct no. But still, what happens is each unit has their own. There are tools provided to them. There is a specialized training provided for using those tools, and they use that tools effectively for cases where they require to use it. If you see the nature of complaint, also what kind of complaints are being reported. That is also very interesting to know. Uh, there are 40% of the cases which do not get reported. Okay, and this may be a personal issue, a company issue, and they will say, okay, if I have to go and do a police complaint, then a FIR and the court and all, it will take more time and more money, than rather than that I will mark this as a loss. So sometimes the companies have those kind of attitude. When it comes to an individual and its life and it's about individual identity, then they go full fledgedly to investigate, because they have to prove it, and it will again affect them otherwise in the future. So depending on the nature of fraud and the case, the strategy is always changes. When we talk about the capacity building, since last 12 years there is a lot of training which is done by undergone by the police officers. I started my career with NASCOM and DACI, so we used to train officers. They still continue to do so, but also the officers themselves are getting self learning modes. There are a lot of courses which are there. E learning modules are there which help them to understand certain concepts. The I mean, we talk about cyber crimes, and now we blockchain, artificial intelligence, machine learning. This is going to come in the near future. So we are about to just learn one part of it and get accustomed to it, and then you have something new immediately coming up in terms of technology disruption, and then you have to again change your approach to that. So keeping all this in mind, it's a never ending learning perpetual field where everybody is a student till they die, and officers also take it as a challenge, that they need to know something, they need to know new skills about it. But if you see our country, we have more of a law and order issue rather than the actual hardcore criminal, because sometimes it may be a very bold statement to make. People may say, oh, this guy doesn't know even what he's speaking. But we have sometimes bandwidth issue at remote places, thanks to geo services, which has ensured that there is no network issue now at even tier 2 tier 3 regions of the country. So we still have and sometimes we see companies or the entities not doing enough what they have to do. Like a corporate is expected to do certain basic level of compliances, a basic level of audit, a basic level of system in place, and we find that hygiene is not done by them. Then you can't blame the country and the poor infrastructure for that. It is the issue with the person who was entrusted with that responsibility, and he or she failed to do that.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, that you made a key point that accountability needs to be there. That everyone, not just the corporations, but even the individuals, and the governments and academia, everybody needs to be accountable. They need to make sure that they are taking all the steps necessary to protect their data, to make sure that their computers and all the devices are secure. So yes, everybody has a role to play, but you made an interesting point that once the only 40% of the crimes are reported. So that makes me think that yes, in every country it's a challenge that not everything becomes a public knowledge, that we don't know how many cyber breaches are happening in every country, because not everything is reported. But at the same time, there are some nations that are able to monitor the traffic on the internet, monitor what kind of breaches are happening. So even though the public doesn't know that, those agencies know what kind of breaches are happening, only, and then they notify the those specific corporations that you were breached, and then they will come to know, because otherwise the corporations also would not come to know that there was a breach, as far as the networks go. So there, in many countries, developed countries, these agencies, these units are there that are constantly monitoring the
We
traffic
also
on the
India,
internet. Do we have that
India
in India?
in India we have a CERT-in, which is the Computer Emergency Response Team India. This is attached with the Ministry of IT, and they are regularly releasing the advisory services. In fact, they had also released the WannaCry breach 3 months before it actually happened. So there are people who are competent, there are people who are doing their job diligently, and we have agency which does monitoring also. We do not have a specific breach notification law, but the IT Act says that any incident which is there, which occurs, need to be reported to CERT-in. So in a way, they are a nodal agency for the country to disseminate information on cybersecurity awareness as well as threats which are there. Plus, the CERT-in is member of other certs which is globally associated and linked. So the business, the information is again shared among them, and then it is passed to the country. But people who are in the ecosystem, it is also the duty for them to go on this website to read that. Not always you will be available publicly, so they have a public portal on which they publish it. But if nobody goes and reads it, it is like not ineffective. Then you can't blame that we don't have a system which is not doing so. We have a system, but the company should know, okay, there is this body which exists and we need to go and see there regularly for the updates or the CVEs which are being reported. But if the company does not do that, if the person who is entrusted with this responsibility within the company, like the IT admin or the system admin, if they or the CISO, or if they don't go and do this, then you can't blame that, okay, the country is not doing this. It is there, it is existing, but people are not forthcomingly going and visiting. They wait for a awareness circular to be sent and then they go and see. So the attitude has to change.
Are you saying that these are the individuals you're talking about, that they are not going on that portal to see what kind of security threats are,
When we say it is
identified, or the anti corporations?
no, when we say it is more about individuals, because companies are part of it, they have their own. So we have a certain, we have a financial cert, we have various different forums where people are being notified by the statutory bodies also at times. So, but then when we talk about individuals, we need to have a more of a mindset and a cultural issue which needs to be shifted from being from being reactive to being proactive, which still needs a lot of there's a lot of scope for improvement for this, because Indian typically, when we see even for corporates or the clients which comes to us, sometimes they don't even disclose full information to us. They only tell part information, and based on that part information we do our strategy, but then we come to know that the client only itself is not disclosing information properly, which is very vital for the incident. Sometimes even it happens that way. Sometimes we also see that all information is given, but then the concerned information is not properly conveyed by them because of lack of the way it has to be. So there is a challenge there. There is no denial for it, but the how we take that seriously or how deep we go in that decides the further course of action. When we talk about corporates, they are members. by statute required to comply with the Indian law. People at a level of the senior security officers within the companies, they know they have their own close group forums to discuss and share best practices. It may not be known publicly always, but there are efforts which are behind the scene also been taken at appropriate levels. So that's why you find less breach, or breach also only when there is something which is major, which is completely due to some ignorance only will come. Otherwise, most of the times the issues or incidents are regulated in a way.
Yes, no, of course, and yeah, you are right about that. That everyone needs to develop that security-centric mindset. We don't live in a time where we can depend on the governments completely to, make sure that they take care of the security, because the nature and definition of security has changed. So everyone, individuals as well as entities across NGIO, that means nations, its government, industries, organizations and academia, everyone has a role to play when it comes to security today, irrespective of whether it's cyberspace, geospace or space. So yes, everything is changing, and our approach and mindset also needs to change. But from your assessment, what complex challenges India faces, especially when it comes to investigating cybercrimes or prosecuting cybercrimes?
So when I talk about investigation, there are a lot of times we don't get cooperation from the international providers, service providers, basically. So that's a challenge which is always there. That's why if you see in the recent past, government is very heavy on certain sites to have data localization, because that is a demand by the law enforcement. Because if you don't get information, then it becomes difficult for the person to be caught. Like for example, I had proposed one solution on a public a comment for a one incident. Like WhatsApp, typically a lot of fake news and a lot of inappropriate contents are shared on such platforms. So if we do a time stamping, the person who posts the first post, the name, the number and the time which is watermarked on that post, and whoever may be forwarding it, that will never go. It has to be always present in that. Automatically such fraud will reduce within a week, because there will be accountability. The moment I post something, my mobile number and my time goes, whoever forwards it further, the mobile number and the time will always remain on that post. That means if somebody has to find out the originator, they need to find the number of this person and then they get to him. The moment we have something like this, it will be a big boon for it. But then people will cry, oh, what is about our privacy? And there's no privacy for us. Our number is being displayed on the post which we have posted. We don't want that to be posted. So now then people would cry on those lines. But this is very important, because then you will 80% of the stuff will get stopped, which is not happening in the right spirit. So this is a very easy solution which can be implemented, but it will not be, because then privacy concerns are there. The platform will lose its secure feature of anonymity. So it's a mix and match of it. But many of them may agree, many of them may disagree to me, which is okay. But I personally feel it should be there so that accountability is fixed. Then when we talk about prosecution, so we need, so judicial officers are getting trained in the latest technology. They are there are judicial academies where they run course for such topics, where they are taught about the latest trends of frauds and how they happen and what they need to take into account before deciding some matters if it comes to their chambers, so that they are aware of the things involved rather than being clueless about how and what is happening. I've been part of the judicial training. We have done trainings in the we have judicial academy in Bombay, in Bhayandar, where the judges are getting trained. We also have advocates which are getting trained for such technology. Still, so awareness and training are the only two tools which is going to be there perpetually for any nation, any country, whether it is India or anywhere, because whatever and how much ever you do for it, it is always less. You always find it is very less, because things are changing. The technology is growing 7 times faster than the normal world, and we still are talking about basics of do's and don'ts when we have something new coming up. So that challenge is always going to be there. But still, I would say that most of the people, if they change their attitude to be more self cautious or vigilant, then I think majority of such issues can be prevented and it can be addressed by them.
Yes, absolutely. No, I think you made a very interesting point about the timestamp, on applications like WhatsApp, where, people, anonymously, just keep forwarding, and then we don't know where that digital data originates. So that is something that each nation, not just, India, but each nation needs to, collectively agree on that. Let's tie the digital identity to any flow of data, where it originates, so that irrespective of where it goes, we know where the content originated. That way we'll be able to manage, like, some say fake news, or, fake data, or, things like that, or any crime originating, or any virus, or malware, that is being sent, by those messages or emails, in any format. So yes, we do need to uh, collectively come to an agreement on how we can tie the digital identity, how we can tie the individual's identity and create a digital identity, so that we know where, who is doing what, and, where the crime originates. So this is something that in the coming years we will have to do, whether,
Like this is my
irrespective of.
this is my thesis topic. I'm doing a PhD in EID theft and business fraud. So I'm coming with a concept where how do you ensure the identity of the person is fixed? Because we have n number of documents. We have voter card, passport, PAN, Aadhaar, ration card, bank passbooks. So and each of them don't talk to each other. You can have n number of addresses on them. There is no central body to certify you as an identity. Then there is only one number given to you. Like individuals, we have DNA which makes us distinct from each other. So something similar on those lines. So it's something, maybe next time when we talk on those lines I can share more on it. But because the theme is cybercrime investigation in India, so the position is not that bad, if you ask me. In my personal experience, we have seen good detections by the officers, we have seen good recovery by the officers here. But again, it depends on the affordability part of it, because if there is a corporate, they would come and they would forthcomingly do this because of the reputation and the corporate compliance. But if it is an individual, then they are very shy for their own reputation, because we have seen educated people, who are doctors, qualified doctors, engineers, lawyers, they have been victim to such frauds, and then they are not openly coming and telling, because then people will laugh, oh, you being in this profession have fallen into so and so trap. So, and there are sometimes they are not even at fault. Somebody just misrepresents them and does something. Like we also are a target. Like somebody will always want to, attack, try to attack my ID and my, because I practice in this domain. So I'm also at equally at threat or at risk, which otherwise a normal person would be. And I've seen attacks and attempts. People try to compromise our emails. We get alert about somebody tried to give a wrong password. We set those alerts. So that's why we come to know. Otherwise, there are people who hardly know that whether this alert also makes some sense for them. So the awareness also at a different level, different type, customized one for different individual, different segment of the society is also required. And whatever is done will always be not at par, but at least at a reasonable level, where you can say, okay, 70-80% of the issues are handled. That 20% of margin will always be open to compromise or attack. So whether it is India or any other country, you will always have that 70-30 or 80-20 ratio, where 70%, 80% would be on the right track, and that 20-30% would always be need to cope up with the 80%.
Sure, and that is where the big complex challenges lie, because now the computer code, connected computers and internet have connected everyone. Not only cyberspace, geospace, and space, but also individuals and entities across nations, its government, industries, organizations, and academia. So even if, let's say, 80% of the people have take all the security measures, do all the things right, but if the 20% have not done it, then the whole nation's security is still vulnerable, and there are complex challenges emerging from that. And you made an interesting point about that. India cares. I mean, there is a more the mindset is towards the reputation. So a lot of people, like you said, they don't come forward, even if it's not their fault. In United States and Western countries, that happen, they don't come forward because of the liability issues, legal liability. And that we don't see more in India, because I don't think that legal challenges are there the way it exists here.
The new law proposes that. So the new data protection law says that there will be penalty on the company if they fail to. So there is a concept of data fiduciary, and there are, the new law is trying to address those risks where a company is made accountable and they will have to pay fine for the breach if they are not taking enough precautions for that. But
Sure.
it's going to.
At the same time, like filing lawsuits against, irrespective of, what industry, not just cybercrime, but, against the doctors or against corporation, that is still not there in India. We don't see that many lawsuits emerging, like, it happens in Western countries. So yes, it is still a
Here it does happen, but it is not publicly known. Like for example, there is a consumer forum where the doctors, if you there is a service deficiency, you can go against a professional and file a case against them in the consumer court. But so if you see, there are a lot of cases which are online reported, but then there is no centralized centralized database which can give you numbers. So that's why we feel it is not happening.
I
But it does exist in silos. There are things which are addressed, but you will not find everything at one place. That is the issue. Yes, so we because we need everything to be at a center point, because that's where your statistics, your data speaks. So there is nothing which we have in central form, but it exists in silos in each state, each level. Different data is.
Sure, even if it's not centralized, as long as it's reported and that education awareness comes, that, these kind of legal challenges will, occur, if there somebody is not being accountable, or if somebody is misusing, people's identity, or, fraud is happening, any kind of crime is happening, irrespective of cyberspace, geospace or space. So let's I hope that, that education awareness, is more, and reporting is more. But this is the last point, because we are almost an hour. What would you like to tell our global viewers and listeners, especially about, the young minds who are out there, trying to, as you must have noticed also, and, as every country has noticed, that there are a lot of young people out there who are getting very, attracted by these whole new, dark web, that has emerged. And how easy it is to make money uh, from through, using the security vulnerabilities of vulnerable people. So what would you like to tell them, especially about the cyber crimes and cyber prosecutions, and cyber investigation in India?
So this to summarize, this question, and one in one line, there is a Locard's principle of forensic. At every crime scene, something is taken and something is left back of the person who does that. So internet being a platform, though it is anonymous, it has a particular mechanism which records everything. There is nothing anonymous, even if the one feels he or she is anonymous. Okay. So even if there is a dark web involved, you have to come to surface for a point to be connected with the dark web. So there is a possibility of a person getting caught. It is difficult because of the sophistication of tools and the proxies and the other things which are involved. But you know, then there are trial and error, mix and match efforts which are used at times for investigating such frauds and catching people who are doing something behind the scenes. So the message to be given to all global users and in India and across the globe, that each country has to unite. We have to have a global cyber law in place, not a cyber law per country, which is only with that state, because cyber space is the only space which is international jurisdiction is there. Okay, and it's a common issue, common threat faced by each economy, whether you're a developed nation or a developing country or underdeveloped. The technology is common, which is the only means which will communicate and connect everybody across the globe. So you have to have a uniform cyber law in place to address it, and all the police officers of various states need to have their own community building and talk to each other for real time resolutions, because some common threat would be common for each country. Each, the modus operandi of a particular attack would be same for some countries, and if those law enforcement talk to each other, it could be addressed faster.
Yes.
So it's a very hypothetical, long vision kind of a statement. But I personally feel going forward, we should have a common cyber law across the globe. Not that okay, you are this country, so you will have only this much of law and not otherwise. Because technology does not understand boundaries. It
Yes.
does not understand the nature of a country.
Very
It
true.
is there to give you the facility to be used. So if that is the case, then we need a common global cyber law, common cyber law, which
Absolutely.
will regulate this, rather than each country doing their own bit of it. Because it is going to then also, if it's a common objective of the globe, the amount of investment also will reduce because everybody will share the pie of it. So it's something which is a very thought process, a research oriented topic, I mean, in itself. But I personally feel a day will come where we'll have a common cyber law, where most of the things, like if we were to do the reality check, out of the 209 countries odd, we have some 71 to 75 countries which have cyber law in place.
Yes.
So there are still countries which do not have this existing in their own country. So they will follow OECD guidelines or the ITU guidelines, or the global best practices which will be inherited or adopted by them. So a time will come, maybe not today, tomorrow, maybe 2 5 years down the line, where we will see a global cyber law in place.
Yes, absolutely. We do need global standards. We do need cyber law, and we do need to move away from working in silos. That is, the heart of the message that you are trying to say. So, thank you so much, Advocate Vicky, for participating in Risk Roundup today. We appreciate your thoughtful insight on cybercrime investigation, and especially the current state of India's. How they investigate cyber crimes and what needs to be the future state, that vision that you just gave. So our global viewers and listeners will benefit tremendously from the information you shared on how cyber crimes are investigated, and how what needs to be there, what is there, and what needs to be there. So even if a single crime is investigated properly based on the discussion we had today, or if a single individual develops that education and awareness because of this risk roundup dialogue that we just had, this risk roundup dialogue has been of service, and we thank you for that.
Thank you for inviting me and having me this pleasure to interact with you. And I hope to see we can talk on various topics going forward in future.
Absolutely wonderful. Thank you so much. So, Risk Roundup, a global initiative launched by Risk Group, is a security risk reporting for risk emerging from existing and emerging technologies, technology convergence, and transformation happening across cyberspace, geospace, and space. We at Risk Group believe that risk management, security, and peace, they walk together hand in hand. Though security is related to management of threats and peace to the management of conflict, risk management is related to management of security vulnerabilities as well as management of conflict. It is not possible to conceive any one of the three without the existence of the other two. All three concepts feed into each other. We believe that the security we build for ourselves is precarious and uncertain until it is secure for everyone across nations. Tradition becomes our security. So, if we build a culture of managing risk effectively, it will lead us to security, and security will lead us to peace. Let's manage the existing and emerging risks together. For more information on the risk roundups, to watch the risk roundup webcast or hear the risk roundup podcast, please go to riskgroupllc.com and do not forget to subscribe and share. Until next time, I'm Jayashree, host of Risk Roundup, signing off. See you next time. Thank you.